Hello, colleagues. As I take a deeper dive into the LNG value chain to understand the dynamics of different business segments, the small scale LNG attracts a lot of my attention. So, with that in mind, today's topic of discussion is, can small scale LNG bring the next big revolution? The presentation that I've put together does not cover all the facets of small scale LNG, but I will make a candid effort to put together the dynamics at a broader level based on the market research I have done on this topic. So let's get started. And going forward, in my slides, I'll be using the acronym SSLNG for small scale LNG. So let's first understand what the term small-scale LNG refers to. SSLNG refers to the direct use of LNG in its liquid form, as opposed to the traditional model of producing LNG and regasifying it before using it. This approach is more scalable and offers flexibility because of its plug-and-play format. The traditional LNG route starts by subcooling the natural gas within the huge liquefaction trains, shipping to distant places via marine vessels in liquid form, and then regasifying it as and when required before using the fuel in the vapor form, also referred to as peak shaving. So as opposed, the SSLNG liquefaction plants are very modular and can be directly installed closer to the user and supply end users in places where traditional infrastructure does not reach, or to consumers requiring liquid fuel. The production capacity of this SSLNG is typically small compared to the bigger liquefaction trains, and it is anywhere in the range of 500,000 tons per year. Now let's learn more about the major end users of small scale LNG. So the three main users of small scale LNG are marine fuel, that is bunkering, direct liquid fuel for heavy road transport, and third one is the power generation in off-grid locations. So as we all know that LNG as a marine fuel is gaining a lot of traction these days because it supports a perfect decarbonization solution. LNG fueled vessels emit virtually no SOx, and particulate material, while dramatically limiting emissions of NOx. So the use of SSLNG with its plug-and-play nature in the maritime sector can reduce GHG reductions up to 21% compared with the current oil-based marine fuels over the entire life cycle from well to wake, including methane emissions. This means that when combined with the Energy Efficiency Design Index, which is EEDI, improvements to ship design with SSLNG, we should be likely able to meet the IMO 2030 decarbonization targets for the new build vessels. So that sounds very, very ambitious. Now coming to the second one, which is the direct fuel, liquid fuel for heavy road transport. Several Asian countries have laid out ambitious road fuel plans to overcome the huge problem of pollution and combating GHG emissions. So for all the above reasons on no SOx or NOx and particulate matter, LNG is instrumental and it is most sought after clean fossil fuel solution for the transportation industry as well. Many Asian countries have already successfully used LNG fueled trucks and buses to create business for the retail outlets. Again, due to the plug-and-play modular approach of the SSLNG and being more scalable to cater the end users, SSLNG can be used at places where pipeline network is hard to reach. And the next sector is the power generation in off-grid location. Small-scale LNG has emerged as an effective and reliable solution for off-grid power generation and supply. On account of its flexibility, small-scale LNG has fueled demand in areas which were previously unsuited to LNG as a fuel source, such as off-grid power generation in remote areas or islands. These include the use of small-scale LNG in households as well as for industrial purposes. A key driver for demand in off-grid power generation application is the development of an efficient and sustainable logistics network so that the end users in the remote locations can be reached. In addition, the investment required to switch towards LNG power is relatively lower than required for other applications such as trucking and bunkering, as no major infrastructure is required. So, these were the details on the three main end users for small scale LNG. Now let's move on to the next slide. So as mentioned earlier, the market for small scale LNG is progressive, yet relatively immature, and it's yet to reach its full potential. Nevertheless, it is assuring as several major energy companies are already involved in SSLNG, including Shell, NG, ENI, which brings the small scale LNG into mainstream. Applications such as industrial and power and the potential to transport LNG over long distances without the need for heavy investments like pipeline definitely push the growth of small scale LNG market across the globe. The global small scale LNG market size is estimated to be 2.3 billion US dollars in 2020, and it is projected to reach $2.6 billion by 2025. So a compound annual growth rate of 2.6%. Within several different markets, Asia Pacific is the largest and fastest growing economy for the small scale LNG. And this is owing to its increasing usage in various end use applications such as heavy duty vehicles and industrial and power. The increase in demand is because of the growing population, rising disposable income, and economic growth in China, South Korea, and Taiwan. So with that, let's move on to the next slide. Now in this slide, let's discuss some trends influencing the small-scale LNG market size. So first and foremost, the rising use of LNG as a primary energy source is one of the biggest reasons to drive the small-scale LNG market size. Then, as I mentioned earlier, small-scale LNG is scalable, meaning users can easily add capacity to serve the increased last-minute demands of their users. Then, factors such as opportunity to gain profits in the shorter duration is one of the other main drivers for the small-scale LNG. The technology offers investors more immediate and potentially attractive returns in the near term, given its plug-and-play service, and of course, lower investment requirements and accelerated commissioning schedules. Large-scale projects are definitely more capital intensive and could be risky, and they use complex technologies and equipments. Additionally, they also face a constantly changing regulatory environment, with which at times can be very challenging to achieve. As I mentioned earlier, due to the growing demands for LNG as a source of fuel for ships and heavy duty vehicles, the application for transportation is expected to provide a major boost for the small scale LNG market. The difference in price between LNG and oil is one of the major drivers that alters the total cost of ownership for the end user. And next trend that I would like to bring on the table is, of course, there is increasing interest in SSLNG from the remote residential and industrial power generation sectors. The ability to use LNG in its liquid form without going through the regasification process helps small business developers to create more feasible business models. Precisely because of this flexibility, small scale LNG can stimulate demand in areas of the market that were previously unsuited to LNG as a fuel source, such as the off-grid power generation on the islands and in the remote areas. Increased liquidity of LNG and growing environmental drivers are likely to increase the adoption rate of small-scale LNG, particularly in US, Europe, and China. And last but not the least, the SSLNG's benefit over large-scale LNG ventures are lower capex, faster construction cycles, and as mentioned above, quicker payoff periods. So these are pretty much all the trends that influence the small scale LNG market size now and in near future. Now coming to $1 million question, that what factors would support the expansion of small scale LNG segment? Few weeks back, I read a very insightful article which was presented by one of the esteemed gas industry speaker at the Gastech 2018 conference. In fact, this topic gained a lot of momentum in several conferences past 2 years. And the speakers made a very convincing and remarkable point that to succeed in the small scale business segment, uh, companies will have to develop the right business model, have a flexible strategy, and of course, build core capabilities. The strategic approach definitely lies in integrating all the operations across the entire LNG value chain and building successful partnerships. It's important that the winning players remain active across all the segments of the industry, right from the supply of the gas to the transportation and distribution, right down to the point of direct commercial relationships with end users. So it is simple to say that companies that will move with more agility, with the right strategy and capabilities in place, and that can build partnerships across the entire LNG value chain, will definitely reap the results sooner. So, with such a strategized approach, small scale LNG may be the next big revolution in the LNG sector. Good news is that there are a lot of successful market leaders already recognized in the industry that offer a range of standard plant solutions for small scale LNG liquefaction. I would not like to particularly reference any specific industry players, as my presentation is not to endorse, advertise, or market any specific company or their products, but to create a general awareness on the SSLNG segment. So, to name a few, I believe Linde is into this business segment, Air Products and Chemicals, and Siemens, General Electric, GE Oil and Gas, Black and Veatch, Chart Industries, ConocoPhillips, Pertamina, Statoil, and several others. These market leaders have several off-the-shelf proven SSLNG modules which they have used to cater the needs of the three major end users of SSLNG, which I mentioned in the slides above in my presentation, and also have a proven track record and industry references. So conclusively, and based on the market research and understanding the dynamics, definitely the success of small scale LNG segment majorly depends on integrating all the operations across the entire LNG value chain. So with this, time to wrap up my presentation. I hope you guys were able to glean a lot of information into this segment of LNG. And Let's meet up with uh, some other interesting segments next time. Bye for now. Stay safe. Thank you.